Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Miss Storybook. She is here to tell us all about her amazing Read Aloud YouTube channel. Before we invite Miss Storybook in, we want to let you know we have a brand new Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. Bo Wants to Know by Brian Sullivan received our panel's full support. 5 stars all the way around. This is a wonderful tale of a persistently curious young boy whose head is full of questions. It's written in a playful rhyming verse, and the text is as energetic as Bo is himself. What makes the grass green and what makes it grow? Why can't we have a lion, a baboon, or a giraffe for a pet? What's up in the sky? A young boy in this beautifully illustrated rhyming book is endlessly curious and determined to find out the why and how of just about everything around him. Little ones and their parents will be charmed and delighted after reading about a young child's wonderings about the world around us. Any child who has ever asked why, and any parent who has ever attempted an explanation will recognize themselves in this sweet picture book. Congratulations once again to Brian Sullivan. Bo Wants to Know is a Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. Joining us right now from the land where dreams come true, sunny Los Angeles and California. Our guest today is a little bit different in a lot of ways, a lot of good ways. Please welcome to the show the driving force, the star of Miss Storybook, Ariana Nicole. Ariana, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, Jed. Happy to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on. You are the host, the founder, the inspiration behind the Miss Storybook show, which is a show that kids and families can access on YouTube. But unlike the literally thousands of read aloud story YouTube channels out there, yours is really different. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So, I really wanted to kind of find a way to give children a platform for their voice. I wanted them to become their own authors. They're going to become the author of the stories we read. So I asked children to send me their stories, and I perform them. I bring them to life, and it's exciting for me. It's exciting for them. I mean, every episode, I just can't wait to see how it turns out, and then I can't wait to see the child's reaction to their story coming to life with illustrations, with little props. I mean, the whole shebang.
That's really fascinating. We've done some neat kind of things here on the podcast. A couple of times we've had groups of authors come together to create original stories for the show, where I give a group of 7 or 8 or 9 authors a prompt, and then author number 1 takes it and writes the first couple of paragraphs and then hands it off to number 2 and number 3. No one knows what's going to go on after they hand theirs off. And then they come together to read the story together on the podcast. And it's really neat when it gets to the end of the story, because everybody in the room is like anxious to find out how their story ends. I imagine, so when I'm seeing published authors, who've published dozens of books, when they get that excited to see their part of a story come to life on my podcast, I'm imagining that a 6 or a 7 or a 10-year-old, when they hear their story and they see their story acted out on the Miss Storybook show, their minds must explode.
I mean, yes, honestly, I knew going into it that would be my favorite part, but I had no idea how much that drove the train, you know. I mean, to be every episode, I just look forward to seeing that reaction. And you know, honestly, Jed, Miss Storybook is a culmination of many things, but one of the things that for me where I really felt strongly that I wanted to create this safe, inclusive platform for children to share their voices. It really comes from me and my own feelings, even as an adult. You know, I know you feature all these wonderful authors, and I just am in awe and applaud you for giving them these opportunities to talk about their work and their imagination and their ideas. And I wanted to give that to children, you know, and authors as well. I do feature books written by authors. I do a mix, and I do create my own original Miss Storybook storybooks. But that's where it comes from, is I want to give anyone and everyone the opportunity to share their voice and to share their story.
Yeah. Why is that so important to you? Why is encouraging kids to find their own voice and to share their voice why are you so passionate about it?
You know, I'm going to try not to get too emotional. I always get emotional when I talk about this, but, you know, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well. We all, as you grow older, you know, different things come at you, things you expect, things you don't expect. And sometimes between insecurities, self-doubt, you know, different struggles, it kind of can push down and take away from some of the things that you loved. I mean, as a child, or just, I don't even say as a child, but in your soul, the things that make you you, that make you light up, that make you bright, that make you excited. And I felt I had to do a lot of soul searching, as I bet many have in these last couple of months, especially, to finally build up the courage to say, I need to do this. I need to do this for me, you know, I need to do this for others. I feel like this is something that's really needed that doesn't really exist. Because as you mentioned, I've wanted to read stories to children for years, you know, but I knew, and I've always known, like, you know, that there's more to it than that. And I took a journey for me to figure out what that desire was in me and how to express it through the storybook.
Yeah. Well, I have the advantage of looking at Miss Storybook set, and it's just beautiful. She's in this beautiful princess chair. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like one of those chairs where if it was in my house, my mother wouldn't let me sit on it. And we had a couple of chairs like that. And there are these beautiful pictures behind her, and a little tea set. And but the thing that really kind of stands out is this really magical looking mailbox. It definitely looks like something that would feel very, very at home on my on the stage of my magic show. Can you tell us a little bit about the mailbox?
Yes. So, you know, of course, being that Miss Storybook came to life through a culmination, also came through a culmination of people. So my family, being, I mentioned to you earlier, I'm best friends with my parents. They kind of, you know, they've helped me throughout this journey. My mom actually does all my illustrations. My dad's my little editor. He'll tell me, oh no, pick that, not that, you know. But the mailbox was a mailbox I found that did not look like this at the time. And my mom and I and my dad sat around the mailbox, and we just started painting it and making it imaginical, as I call it. It's the imaginical mailbox. And the idea is that this is the place where magic and imagination come together. And this is where children will send me their stories, and they'll get to see their story, take it out of the mailbox, and then I'll read it.
Oh, cool. I'm curious, have there been any stories, because as you were talking about sharing kids' stories, my mind, anybody who's listened to the show knows my mind wanders and takes these really kind of weird off-road trips. But there are certain things that just kind of stir up memories. And as you were talking about kids sharing their stories, I had this flash of a memory of when I was playing Santa Claus in a shopping mall in suburban Boston. And by the way, parents, shopping mall Santa Clauses deserve a medal. It is the most miserable job. It is a tough job, because you got to see the kids got to go and they 30 seconds on your lap. But there was this one child who came up to me and sat on my lap and said, "Santa, can you bring my grandmother back?"
Oh.
And I'm wondering if there have been any stories like that that have surprised you with how personal the story was.
You know, so far, yes and no. I think so far, I will say that a lot of the stories I've received have been pretty light, you know, but I will admit that I found myself writing original story from a storybook about a week ago. And as I'm writing the story that's focused on the relationship between siblings as kind of a focus, I was in tears. I'm one of three. And I'm writing this story that for the most part is very upbeat and, but it's just amazing how these stories, as you mentioned, do bring up all these really deep rooted feelings for sure.
Yeah. Has there been a trend? Are you able to sit back and say, well, a lot of the stories talk about lollipops or, candy or superpowers? Are there any trends that you're noticing?
Well, I think mom and dad are definitely at the top of the list, which I can relate to again. I'm married, I have a loving husband, but I also have my parents that are like the center of my world as well. So I think that, especially with family, which is such obviously all about what you're doing in this world is reading and family, bringing families together. I think the big trend has been just how seeing through a child's eyes, their perception of their family and their relationship maybe to their siblings or their parents. I had a Valentine sent to me, and it was talking about her baby sister Eloise. These are just the things that, I get to learn about these children through their stories, which is so special.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really happy you said that, because it just reinforces a message that we've talked about here on the podcast, that you are, as a parent, you are your child's first and most important teacher. When you take the time to sit down every night and spend 20 minutes reading with your child, I know you might just think it's something I have to do, but it says so much. You are the most important person in your child's life. You're the person that your child looks up to more than anybody else. And when you, the most important person, take the time to shut everything off and to sit down and devote yourself to your child for 5, 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour, that says the world. It lets the child know that they are so very, very important.
Very. And buddy, okay, so I have to tell you, because I'm like you, my brain goes in all different directions. I think it's the creative brain, right? It goes everywhere. So what's interesting is I get a question. Talk about something that keeps popping up. Same question every time, which is, children seem to want to ask me if what I'm touching, like the mailbox, I have a key that I open it with, all my little props that I play with, if they're real.
Ah.
Which I think is so interesting, because then it obviously says a lot about, the world that we live in now, which is so digital, it's so different than what I grew up with, and I definitely feel like what I love also about Miss Storybook that I've been trying really hard to stick to is the nostalgia of real things that children can touch and feel connected to. Cause I definitely, it's interesting how parents, that's like the biggest feedback too is I love that this just has such like a sweet simplicity to it. But they go, is that real? Is that real? Is that real? It's that, and I think that's interesting that they obviously their whole lives are, when they're watching things, they're being exposed to, images that are not touchable, tangible, real objects. So I just found that to be very interesting as well.
I'm really glad that you said that, because our kids, especially now in the past year, they've been living in a digital world. Uh-huh. And so they're very, very used to screens, and they're aware of the fact that they can create a virtual background in Zoom or on Skype, and so and I also know kids are very much aware that they can put a virtual background of themselves, a still picture of themselves, and then go off, and their teacher doesn't know that they're not there. But it wouldn't no idea. But yeah, on the one hand, that's fascinating, but on the other hand, I think that's kind of concerning. It should be something that we look at. I know, somebody who does magic shows, I often get the question at the end of a show, is what you do real? And I'm very honest with them, and I say, they'll say, where do you get your magic powers? And I say, I don't have any. I'm doing tricks. I read magic books, and it taught me how to trick you. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm doing it in a way that's meant to be fun and entertaining. I'm not trying to hurt you by tricking you. And so it makes sense. Yes, of course, this person make this thing disappear, and it appears. And is that real? It's blowing my mind. It's now when they're seeing a person on the screen, and they're seeing you interact with things, and they have to ask, is that real? It's amazing. It's certainly a statement of our time. I'm wondering if we should be concerned about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely, I took it as, like you're saying, I took it as a potential concern. I mean, I feel, it takes obviously a lot of time and effort, but as you can see what's behind me, I put a lot of love and care into all the little details that go in to what I'm touching, feeling, what I surround myself with. Because in the storybook world, for the most part, I want it to feel as real and genuine as possible, and I just think that's important. And actually, you brought up the best point. Over the last year, most children are really literally just looking at computer screens, and, more than ever. Yeah. So if I can kind of capture them and make them feel more connected, because what I'm doing is real to them and real to me, I mean, that's the best compliment I could have.
Yeah. And I'm also glad that you mentioned that, because I think it's a great reminder for parents to help their kids become media literate. And, so it would be really instructive for parents and kids to sit down and talk about the Miss Storybook set, and to understand, these things are, they're real. Miss Storybook has made the choice to use real things and to be able to touch them. But a lot of the stuff that we see is make-believe, and it's the stuff called CGI and special effects. And let's talk about that so that you're aware of it, and the more you're aware, the less able you are to be manipulated by it.
Well, my role models, of course, are going to be Mr. Rogers, who I grew up watching. And when you think about it, there really hasn't been another Mr. Rogers since Mr. Rogers. I feel like everything transitioned kind of after him, into this whole digital world. And even I think about Sherry Lewis, Lamb Chop. There's definitely, I feel like, a need for this nostalgic simplicity again in children's lives and parents' lives. I have parents say to me, all the time, I feel so good that I know that I can just let my children sit down and enjoy an episode of Miss Storybook and not worry about what any kind of weird messages or, everything is safe. Everything is, very sweet and wholesome. And because actually if you look at a lot of cartoons, sometimes they're not entirely that way.
It's interesting that you say that. It made me think and ask, have there been any stories that have come into you that you say, I can't read this story. This is just too out there. It's too weird. It's too political. I don't want to go there.
Well, I definitely try to be open-minded. I think that It's been a little bit of a challenge sometimes more on social media because I want to be very careful. I feel very strongly about keeping Miss Storybook just like a safe, inclusive space, and I want it to be a place for children to escape to because there's so many messages being thrown at them everywhere. So I just want to keep this space as clear and clean and just free air, free creative air for them. So that's the biggest thing I think about when I receive a story is, you obviously first, it will just keep within this creative space that I want to keep safe for them. But yeah, luckily so far I've kept an open mind and I feel like most of the stories have been A-okay by me for sure.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously there's been a lot of great reaction out there. You've shared a lot of that. You mentioned being your mom and dad's best friend and that they've been big parts of the show. How is it for them? What do they think, knowing that they are part of this thing that is really enriching kids' lives all around the world?
Well, they're always proud of me, but I definitely think that they're especially proud of Miss Storybook and what I've done with her and the world of her. My grandma Dorothy, who, is 98 years old, said something really beautiful to me. Again, going back, Jed, to the things that we loved, right out of the womb, the things that were part of our soul. For me, it was always performing, creating for other children, because I was the kid on the playground directing all the kids in the show that we were going to put on for the class. This is so deeply seated in who I am. And my grandma said to me, "Oh, Ari, I feel like I'm getting to see you as a kid again. Like the joy that you're, putting out in the world." It's just, and it just was so meaningful to me that she could see that side of me, emerge. Because, Jed, especially in this Instagram, Facebook, YouTube world, even as children, we're talking children that are very young, that are exposed to this world. There's a lot of ideas, suggestive ideas of what you should look at or look like, be like, and I'll be honest with you. I actually came up with Miss Storybook in 2017, but it took me a long time to build up the courage to push down my insecurities, to put myself on camera and be her. And I'll never forget when I first filmed the first episode, again, I'm being bombarded with all this imagery of Instagram influencers and this and this and this. And I was so afraid that I would be embarrassed of her because of me, because of my own feelings. And when I started watching me as Miss Storybook, I just was so overwhelmed with pride for her. And I thought she was beautiful, and I thought she was wonderful, and I thought she was fantastic. And watching myself become her has really grown me as a person. And now I feel so good and better about myself, because of her. So it's interesting, the relationship between me and her. But I have to tell you, I feel proud. My parents feel proud. And hearing that from my grandma, that was everything. 98 years old, for her to recognize that and be able to enjoy seeing me again, doing the things I love. You can't ask for anything more than that.
That's beautiful. And I can't ask any other questions after that. It's just a beautiful way to end our conversation. But before we do, we want to know where we can find Miss Storybook. Obviously on YouTube, but are there other places where parents can connect with you?
Yes. So I'm very excited because I have actually joined the OMG VIP family. They're amazing. They put on live virtual experiences. Normally it's live, but right now, because of quarantine, it's virtual. And I'm going to be performing a Mother's Day special with them around Mother's Day. So as it gets closer, OMG VIP, I'll be doing that with them, which I'm so excited about. And then, yes, YouTube. You can find me at Miss Storybook on YouTube, as well as my MissStorybook.com website, which I'm in the process of building, but should be up soon enough. And lastly, I've embraced a website called Patreon. I don't know how familiar your listeners are to it, but it supports artists and supports our ability to create this art. And I have actually added some really fun, extra exclusive things for anyone who wants to join me on Patreon for Miss Storybook.
Awesome. Well, we've had a great time going to the land of Miss Storybook and speaking with the inspiration, Ariana, Nicole. Hey, Miss Storybook, thanks so much for sharing this time with us today.
Thank you, Jed. Thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. My co-host in the Protecting the Planet with Our Kids series, Alexia Brown, will be back to introduce us to another fantastic author who will tell us why it's important for us to talk to our kids about climate change and how we can do it in a way that will inspire them to take action and won't scare them. That's the next episode of the show. If you are the author of a great children's book, you may be frustrated at how difficult it is to get people to notice your book. We have a solution. It's our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. It can really help your book stand out from the crowd of books, the thousands of books that are published every single month. Check it out today. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to Certified Great Read. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Miss Storybook. Be sure to check out her YouTube channel. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Hannah Pat Opoyski, Alexia Brown. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.